Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene is being accused of veiled racism after a shouting match with Democrat Jamal Bowman. The argument was over the potential expulsion of indicted Republican Congressman George Santos.
The party has to kick him out. He's embarrassing y'all. The party's hanging by a thread. The party's hanging by a thread. You gotta save the party. Listen, no more QAnon. I need you to save the party.
The Congresswoman suggested she felt physically threatened by Bowman because he had a, quote, history of aggression. Listen.
What concerns me about Jamal Bowman is he has a history of aggression. What's on video is Jamal Bowman shouting at the top of his lungs, cursing, calling me a calling me a white supremacist, which I take great offense to. That is like calling a person of color the N-word, which should never happen. Calling me a white supremacist is equal to that. And I am concerned about it. I feel threatened by him.
She was likely hearkening back to this incident last month.
Any rhetoric that uplifts white supremacy, we are pushing back against that in all its forms. Marjorie Taylor Greene needs to take her ass back to Washington.
This was Congressman Bowman's response to what Greene has said.
Unfortunately, this country has a history of characterizing black men who are outspoken, who stand their ground, and who push back as being threatening or intimidating. So she's not even using a dog whistle. She's using a bullhorn to put a target on my back. I never invaded her personal space. I was laughing and gregarious the entire time. How is that intimidating? Unfortunately, white supremacists, historically, this is what they do.
Here's why he's saying that. This is some important context you should know. Greene is the same person who chased down a teenage survivor of Florida's deadliest school shooting, who was on the Hill advocating for gun control. Watch.
You don't have anything to say for yourself? You can't defend your stance? How did you get over 30 appointments with senators?
And this February, Greene spoke at a white nationalist conference organized by well-known white supremacist Nick Fuentes. All right, let's bring in the table Eric Deggans, TV and media analyst for NPR, CNN's Elena Treen, Jamal Simmons, former communications director to Vice President Harris, and Rena Shaw, a Republican strategist. All right, I'm gonna start with you, Jamal. Can we just call out the hypocrisy here? When you saw that, what did you see between the two of them? Because we can all watch it. It's not like it's something that happened in the dark and nobody saw it, but the two of them, you can see what's going on there.
Yeah. Listen, it wasn't the most sophisticated debate one ever saw on Capitol Hill, right? We can all stipulate that, right? But what was concerning was that Congresswoman Taylor Greene would say that she felt threatened by someone who, as he said, was laughing, was sort of gesturing, was in the middle of a crowd of people. She also said he's not smart. Jamal Bowman has a doctorate in education, founded a school, led a school for 10 years. It all, as he said, goes back to not just dog whistles, but these pretty loud clarion calls to racism. And the thing about Marjorie Taylor Greene, unlike George Santos, right, who this was all kind of staged because of the George Santos debate that was happening on the Hill today. George Santos is a fraud. I mean, everybody can sort of see that he's not really who it is he pretends to be. Marjorie Taylor Greene is not a fraud. She's exactly who it is she pretends to be, and she's scary. She's a Christian nationalist. She says that about 10% of Americans, according to PRI, believe that America should be a Christian nation only. And she said that January 6th would be our 1776 moment. So somebody who when we had the violence of January 6th, saw that as a moment for a new kind of America to be founded. I think she's the scary one out of the exchange that we saw today.
I want to ask you, Rena, what you made of that. And you can all jump in when this is a conversation. I want you to feel comfortable. But, you know, we know from reporting, from CNN and everyone else's reporting, that Greene repeatedly indicated support for executing prominent Democratic politicians in 2016 and 2018, 2019, before she was elected to Congress. And now she's making this accusation that just doesn't seem credible.
Yeah, there's a lot to unpack here for someone who's sitting in a member of Congress's post. It's almost shocking to me. I'm a two-time former senior congressional staffer and over a decade ago, but I'll tell you, this was fast how we got here. To see this kind of extremism and to see, again, a sitting member of Congress weaponize their words on the regular, but when she thinks somebody else is doing, the tactics she employs are not just nonsensical, they're dangerous because it's whataboutism, and then it's wrapped up in racism. It's plain and simple. She doesn't reflect the vast majority of white conservative women in this country. She doesn't reflect their views. She doesn't even reflect the views of the vast majority of conservative women. And I submit to you that the more she continues this, we'll be able to see her real ambition. And I think we already see some of it. She does these incidents, she goes at them alone because she fundraises off of them. You don't see any of her colleagues, the ones who look like her, women in the GOP in the House chamber rushing to her defense. Because what I saw in that incident was a heated discussion between two colleagues. Was it civil? I think it was. But what it indicated is that she and many others, also on the other side of the aisle, I'm not going to say it's equal amounts or in the same way, but I want to say that we do see it, this declining civility in the body of Congress. And that is most dangerous for us because that indicates higher levels of they're going to get less done and higher levels of dissatisfaction with Congress.
With Congress, that's right.
That's it.
Jamal, what do you make of this when you look at the tropes, or sorry, Eric, when you make of the tropes that
Jamal's
she
a
sort
popular
of
name
put...
today. I remember when it was rare. Now it's kind of common. So
Eric and I have hung out on TV.
It's certainly a way cooler name than Eric, so I'll go with that. But, you know, well, one of the things that struck me is that one of the things that we see with white supremacists is that they do try to take on the mantle of issues that have worked for civil rights advocates, right? So this idea that trying to find a term that's supposedly as offensive as the N-word and saying, well, they use that word against me, you know, that was something that was really troubling because the N-word, there's a reason why we don't say that word. I mean, you can tell that phrase white supremacist isn't the same as the N-word because we say white supremacy. We do not say the N-word. And the N-word has a certain history that's wrapped up in the legacy of slavery. And that's also something that a lot of white supremacists want to avoid. They don't want to talk about the impact of hundreds of years of chattel slavery involving black people and the modern legacy of that. And so it's so odd to see her in one breath want to bat away the hypocrisy of criticizing someone who uses the same tactics she does, and then also trying to bat away the legacy of slavery and the weight of the N-word by trying to compare, calling her a white supremacist, which is
She spoke at a
arguably,
white nationalist conference.
which is arguably something you could accuse her of. And comparing it to something as terrible as the N-word. And then finally, we're in a situation where I do feel like the problem is that people like her and her tactics, it can pull other people down to that level. And it really bothers me that a legislator who seems, as you said, really intelligent and accomplished would be drawn into a shouting match with someone like that anyway. I think one of the things you have to realize is that you can't fight that same fight because all it does is bring you down to their level.
Well, you know what else it does, Elena? It sometimes is used in a different way. How much of this do you see when you see something like that will be turned around and used for fundraising? Because I certainly get the things from a whole bunch of different folks who will use that, Ms. Green herself, to raise money.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I think that's something that, to give Marjorie Taylor Greene credit, she knows how to message on these things effectively, and she knows that it plays very well with the Trump base and her base and the MAGA voters, and it's definitely something I think we could likely see in some fundraising appeals. I also think that as this plays out, I mean, her jumping on this, holding a press conference today about the incident, and also distorting some of the facts. I mean, I spoke with some of my colleagues who were on the steps of the Capitol, and they said they were there, they saw the entire interaction. They did not hear any of the words she described about the nastiness of it and calling her a white supremacist in that moment. We obviously saw the video of him doing it in New York, but that's something that her supporters love about her. And I think also at the same time, it's also learning she's not just, as much as she is a far-right member of Congress and a very fringe member of Congress, she also has a lot of sway within the
She does
Republican
now.
Party. She meets weekly with Kevin
I
McCarthy.
mean, as of January, she's got a direct line to the speaker.
She's had it before then, though. I mean, she's been meeting weekly with the speaker, and so she has a lot of power. And so it's fascinating to watch how she can monopolize on moments like
And that
this.
power flows directly from these kinds of confrontations. The confrontations
Well, because
that
money is
put
power.
her
Yeah.
as the
center.
subject of a segment
Yeah.
on CNN.
Yeah, and I guess the question is, I can't help but ask this. I'm sorry, I'm going long, but Rena, why doesn't the party take care of this, deal with her in the way in which she should be dealt with in a lot of people's minds?
They can't do it because she's a celebrity now. That's the thing. She represents this sort of growing, iconic right figure, and it's not right, and it's not fair to the moderates, okay? I'll be very honest. But it has everything to do with money and stardom, and where she goes, she commands an audience, and she draws in those small donors because she gets them excited and she gets them fearful about the future.
And remember, she's got Donald Trump on speed dial.
I know. Thank you so much. Stay